Hello, how are you? Welcome to another episode of Digital of Business and Business of Digital. Today, we have Tori with us. One thing which is common between Tori and Uber is they both started their careers in 2008. We were just discussing that before we started. So, Tori is a digital marketer. He is currently Director of Marketing at LeadSpace, a B2B CDP headquartered in the Bay Area. He has spent last 10 years working in demand generation and marketing ops roles at companies ranging from size of Fortune 1000 down to tech startups. And he loves tech startups a lot. Today, Tori is going to talk about demand generation with us. Welcome, Tori. Thanks a lot for coming.
Happy to be here.
How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. It's a little cold in my area currently, but overall I'm doing okay.
Great. So, whenever we talk to marketers, most of them have come from a background maybe of content, maybe they were into filming, they were into something else. Some of them were into engineering and doing analytics, and that's why they marketing pulled them. You have a very different story on that aspect. So, you are somebody who has turned into marketing from sales. So, can you just brief us about how your journey started and what were the things which you did in your career? So because where you are currently is a very different thing for somebody who has started in sales.
Sure. Yeah. So my intention was always to move into marketing. That's what I studied at undergrad, and that's what I studied in grad school. But when I came out of grad school in 2008 with relatively limited work experience, people weren't itching to hire a marketer without any real marketing experience. And so sales, was the type of role that I was getting some traction as far as applying for jobs and getting some interviews. And so I took a couple sales jobs. I worked in sales for about 2 years before I officially moved into marketing, and I really believe that laid a great foundation for my marketing career. Just understanding the challenges that salespeople go through, the types of issues that they have, the rebuttals that they're getting from clients. These are all things that ultimately help to factor into my marketing career. And going from sales into demand generation was probably one of the most sensible paths that I think you can take from sales to marketing, mainly because the demand generation that I was doing was in direct support of the sales team that I was on. So I really understood, those challenges day to day because I lived them. And I understood the customers' challenges because I spoke to the customers. And ultimately, I think that really kind of helped jumpstart my marketing career. And although I still didn't have a lot of marketing experience when I got my first marketing job, I did have a lot of intelligence about our buyers and the psychology that went into purchasing our services. And so it was a natural progression for me, and ultimately one that I was really looking for any type of in I could get into the marketing world. And so it took me a couple of years, but I found it eventually.
Great. So as you have moved so much in your career now and you have spent a lot of time at a single company which is just under 10 years, and you have seen a lot of things, you have worked with startups also, so you know how an agile team works, you have seen things how corporates work. So what is the layman definition of demand generation that you have for explaining people that this is demand generation?
Yeah, so demand generation, I think, is ultimately creating awareness about a product or service or category, and really helping to take that awareness and ultimately connect buyers and sellers. At the end of the day, that's what demand generation is all about: is finding the people who are ready to buy, and connecting them with the most appropriate seller that can really help answer their questions and solve their problems.
So, which are the most common or maybe the basic aspects of demand generation? So, where should somebody start from, or what is the whole spectrum about it?
Yeah, so demand generation, I think, can take on a lot of different definitions at a lot of different companies. For me, especially in the beginning of my career, it was all about generating leads. Lead generation and demand generation, as far as I knew early on, were one and the same. And as I grew in demand generation, I realized that was not, in fact, the truth. and that lead generation is a byproduct
Yeah.
of good demand generation. However, I don't think when I started my marketing career that marketers were incredibly sophisticated like they are today in 2021. There wasn't nearly as much tech, there wasn't nearly as much data and insights. And so, just really the whole kind of serious decisions demand waterfall was kind of how I built my early knowledge around what demand generation was. And early on, there was a lot of email spray and pray. There was a lot of really just looking at everything as a number in a funnel. If I knew what my conversion rates were and I knew what the ultimate revenue target that I had was, then I would just do reverse math and figure out how many leads I needed to generate. And even the definition of leads, early on, I think was probably inappropriate and has really changed over the years here. But yeah, that was really the focus of mine early on was lead generation. And so nowadays I think demand generation encompasses so much more than that. And there's a lot of content and inbound marketing involved. There's a lot of strategic outbound and targeting involved. And so you need to make sure that you're thinking about things from the perspective of who your buyers are and what their intentions are at the places that you're trying to put content in front of them, and make sure that you do have an appropriate and relevant message for them based on where they might be within their buyer's journey, so to speak, or the problems that they might have, and how you're looking to solve them.
So, whenever somebody sees demand generation as a topic or as a role, there always is a mindset that that person is going to bring in leads, which I think you clarified a lot. And when we see in startups or small companies like agencies and those kind of things, demand generation is mostly uh, linked to advertisements. So, as you said, inbound marketing is also a part of demand generation. Can you elaborate a bit on that? How and what are the things which are to be done in the aspect of demand generation for inbound marketing?
Yeah, so I focus almost exclusively on inbound marketing. To me, that's the most appropriate way to be doing marketing today. Buyers out there just have more information at their fingertips than ever before, and so I think if you've got the right data available, you can be targeted and strategic with outbound. But to really do the most, to have the most profitable and fruitful efforts and campaigns, to me, inbound is the way to go. And it's really all about putting content out there in front of your audience in ways that are going to help and educate them. Because if you're able to help and educate them before they experience that pain point or trigger that leads them to a purchase, or at least assessing vendors, they're going to remember who you are. And so in that respect, I think a lot of branding, brand awareness is really the same thing as demand generation, in that you're looking to educate a very specific audience about who you are and what problems you can solve, so that when they have those problems, you're going to be top of mind, and ultimately that's what starts to create inbound traffic. The other part of inbound marketing is really trying to open up as many channels and avenues as possible for your buyers to find you. So, I'm very active on LinkedIn, as I believe so are many of my buyers. But at the same time, not everyone thinks and operates the same way and spends their time, in the same watering holes or social channels, so to speak. So, you really need to open up as many different channels as you can, test them all, and see which ones are going to be the most fruitful. And that's where you need to spend the most amount of your time. And so, within that as well is really trying to create a frictionless buying process, making it as easy to buy from your company as possible, whether it be from researching who you are and reading your content, to engaging with your sales team. And so, yeah, I think, real demand generation is a full funnel play. And so that's the way I like to think about it. And yes, there is certainly outbound elements as well. And part of that, I think, is keeping tight alignment with sales and SDRs, But for me, the best way I know how to do my job is to really build inbound traffic for a company.
Great. So, inbound, most of the people think doing inbound is just about creating content uh, and publishing a lot of content. But most of the people do not know is distribution of the content is also important in the same aspect. So, can you shed some light on that and how in your journey? Because you as somebody who was just pitching, maybe in sales, you had a client, potential client in front of you, and you were telling him something about your product. So that is a lot different than in inbound marketing where you don't know who is your potential client, but you are writing for somebody or creating content for somebody. And then distribution is also a part where you push it to maybe Quora, you push it to other channels, your content, and then you get people from there to your blog or maybe your emails or those kind of things, newsletter. So can you elaborate more about those journeys, how those are built and what are the things that somebody should make sure while they are doing inbound marketing?
Yeah, so I think if I understand your question, I think it's really with inbound marketing, the most important thing that that you can be doing is putting as much content out there as you possibly can. Now that shouldn't the amount of content that you produce isn't nearly as important as the quality of the content that you produce, but all that is for nothing if you don't know the right way to distribute it, right? So that's where targeting, I think, really comes into play. I'm really big on paid social as a let's call it a channel at this point, just because of the different targeting that's available within things like LinkedIn and Facebook. Knowing that that's where a lot of buyers are on a day-to-day basis, but also that they're not necessarily going to Facebook for the same reasons that they're going to LinkedIn. So the way that you distribute content, the people that you distribute it to, is going to be really important. But then that type of content and the tone of voice that you have on those respective channels is equally as important. And so I think that those are really important things to keep in mind as you're thinking about an inbound strategy. Is not just what content that you have, but also who you're looking to put it in front of and why. And so if your intention is to generate leads, chances are your content is going to fall flat. Whereas if your intention is to legitimately help people and educate them, that's more what is going to really generate some traction and potentially pull people onto your website, especially if you're doing it the right way on things like LinkedIn, where I guess you could say the same for Facebook, but you don't need to put a link to your website in every single post that you make on Facebook. It's just fine to be able to help and educate people on the native platform that they're on without expecting anything in return. And I think when you can really shift your mindset from, we need to pull all the traffic to our website, or we need to put a gate in front of this content, to, I just want to, I want to help this audience. I want to give them tips and tools that they can actually use and leverage. Putting that stuff out there, while it takes a little bit of time to gain traction, that's gonna jumpstart any type of inbound efforts that you have. And so I think that's a really important way to think about content distribution is number one, who your target audience is, but number two, what platform are you on, and is your message or call to action or whatever it is that you're pushing out there, is it appropriate for that channel? And I think once you really keep those things in mind when you're creating and producing your content, that the distribution is a lot more natural and logical afterwards.
So, as you said, you touched upon two big platforms. One is LinkedIn, and another is Facebook. And a lot of people, while posting content, don't realize that same content need not be posted on all the platforms. So somebody creates a square post, they post it on Twitter, they post it on Facebook, they post it on LinkedIn, and again, everywhere, as you said, posting your own links everywhere is not something which is required. So those are, I think, major points for people. But when we see growing organically, you also touched upon the ads part where you get a lot of targeting. But for inbound, growing organically is also important for people. So, which platform do you think currently is helping people a lot in the organic way? Or suppose in 2016, Instagram was pushing people, pushing the creators who were creating something. So today, which are the platforms where people will gain a lot of organic traffic?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is really doing some interesting things with their algorithm as far as you know the different posts that they're gonna put in front of the most people, give the most impressions to, so to speak. And I think if you're really putting out true valuable content on their platform without loading it with a bunch of links and trying to pull people off their site, you'll ultimately kind of get rewarded for those things on LinkedIn. And I think it is a great way to to build awareness about your service or product. Personally, I go on there to educate myself, learn from other marketers, but at the same time, I'm coming across a lot of potential vendors that I might want to work with, and being able to reach directly out to people at that company. So those companies didn't have that intention in mind, when they might have started to market to me, of like, oh, is this guy going to reach out to other marketers on my team and find out how they're using the product? But this is kind of the way that a platform like that can work. And so yeah, I'm a big proponent of LinkedIn, and using it the correct way with intentions, and not just connecting with people and then pitching them right after a connection goes through, or loading up a brand's feed with a bunch of like gated assets trying to collect names and drive leads. No, if you're actually on there, like I keep saying, with the intent to help and educate people in your audience, that's the best way to be discovered, and ultimately drive, and increase organic reach of your brand.
So, as you said, LinkedIn is one of the better tools. And I think one thing that you are continuously pushing on is helping people. So, that is a basic thing, which I think most of the brands or companies at the end of the day forget. They are more on a time on sales, sales, sales. But currently, if you talk to millennials or maybe Gen Z, they can see an ad or a sales pitch 10 kilometers away or maybe 10 miles away, because they have been doing this a lot and they have been seeing things a lot. So for them, content is very important. As a company that you are in, it's more about talking about Lead Square, it targets a much higher audience in a way, in age group. So how do you take that up, and how do you take that challenge up, where you have to target people who are slowly and gradually getting off social media? And so what are the things that you do to target them, or maybe generate demand in that way for your blogs or maybe other things?
Yeah, so I think really the most important people within a marketing organization that we at LeadSpace want to be marketing to are the people that work in marketing operations and sales operations, and even revenue operations to some extent. Although I find that a lot of companies that have a RevOps function are usually a little bit smaller than what I would say is our target audience. But with all that said, the operations folks are definitely on a lot of the most popular social channels, and so they are able to be reached in that way. But one of the other things that I'm a big fan of, that we're really just in the early stages of discussing right now, is what you and I are doing right now, which is starting a podcast as a great way to engage with people within your target audience, and get them to engage with you outside of just things like written content and video content. And so I'm a big fan of the kind of the explosion of all the podcasts that are happening right now. Personally, I think it's great to we're leaning towards the video podcast the way that you and your team have it set up. But as far as like just audio focused podcasts, I listen to them almost every day. And it's usually like when I'm doing things away from my desk, like if I'm, trying to get a workout in, or I'm in the car driving the kids to and from, well, not so much to daycare, but if I'm alone in the car, they don't want to hear any of that stuff. A podcast is just a great thing to throw on and take away some, actionable information. And that's marketing the same way that just 10 years ago it was building white papers and pushing them out there to the masses. It's just a new, more appropriate way to really engage with people on a platform that I think is comfortable, and it's not really it feels like a sales cadence so much as it does, feeling like you're just talking to another person. So yeah, that's something that I think we'll be looking to build over the next couple months here, and use as a way to amplify our brand and our message, but also as a way to engage with people and hear more about the challenges that they go through in their day to day, so that we better understand them as customers or potential customers, and ultimately, those engagements and conversations can really go a long way as far as really investing in sales and marketing touch points.
Great. As you said about podcast, I think it is one of the best tools currently, which we see as in this southeast region, which we are currently. Due to lockdown, a lot of people started listening to the podcast because they were spending a lot of time on screens, maybe watching Netflix or maybe watching Amazon Prime, and then there was a screen fatigue which was there. And for learning, they moved to podcast. We used to and where it's a one-way communication. A lot of times it's a two-way, it's an interview type of thing where people love to hear each other's experiences, and it's not formatted in a way where it will delight you in a way what most of the shows or programs on Netflix or those kind of things are. It's not scripted. Most of the podcasts which I hear too, as you said, you go in a car and you hear the podcast. Same with me. I also during my travel, I usually travel 1 hour 20 minutes a day, and that is the time when I hear podcast a lot, and it's a great source of learning. So whoever is listening to this podcast, kindly continue doing that. So moving on from podcast, because I think what 2020 is has taught us is maybe building communities and building your own media is very important, or own medium in that way. So there was a quote somewhere that in 2020 or after 2020, most of the companies who want to succeed have to be their own media house, because suddenly Facebook takes down something, the organic reach goes. Currently, LinkedIn is giving you organic
Yep,
reach, and then that will also go down
for
sooner
sure.
or later, because they have to also at the end of the day earn money. TikTok is giving organic reach currently, and then slowly they will also cut down. Clubhouse is a new thing which people are on right now, but just the iOS users. So, what do you think about building own media or own medium for people to engage? As you are very much into inbound marketing, I think you understand that aspect a lot, where building your own audience is very important rather than building audience on other platforms. So, what is your experience with that, and what would be the guidance for other people?
Yeah, I think you're 100% spot on. Owning your audience and owning the media that you create is extremely important for the longevity of a brand. I mean, we all just trust that LinkedIn isn't going to shut our account down or anything like that. But if you do over index on a channel like that one, and something random does happen, and somehow you do lose that account, you lose all your followers, and just at the snap of the fingers like that. So yeah, I think ultimately, whether it be subscribing to a podcast, which podcasts can be a difficult thing to really promote and distribute on a larger scale. I think the probably more appropriate one would be, things like email newsletters. That's a great way to get people, number one, opted into a communication with your team, but number two, it's also an easy kind of transition from posting something on LinkedIn and just getting someone to click a link and sign up for your newsletter. I think that's much more of a passive ask than any other type of gated content, let's call it. And so yeah, I think as long as people are finding ways to connect the audiences that they're building on social with a legitimate owned audience, whether that be an email list or a subscription list, of whatever the case. Yeah, I think that's a really important thing that companies do need to give a lot of thought to, because yeah, there is a little bit of risk with just going too heavy in your focus on social media and all these other platforms that are just getting more and more popular, getting filled with more and more ads and marketers. And so you expect that at some point, any success that you're having there is going to plateau. And whether that be because of you're just pushing too much out on that specific channel and you've kind of reached your saturation point, or people are just not tuning into those channels the way that they used to. Whatever the case, I think it is important to kind of diversify, so to speak, in your approaches, and do make sure that you are finding ways to to really create your own audiences outside of those specific channels.
So, one question which I always have with people, while we create our own audiences and we have our email list ready, and we have our own website where we get people and then they subscribe to our email list in some way or the other. What are the tools and technologies which somebody needs to understand or get used to? Or which are the tools which you would recommend somebody in the beginning to use? Because maintaining an email list and then mailing them from Gmail or something is not something which people would like to do. So which are
Sure.
maybe go-to tools which you know or would like to use, which will help people in owning the audience?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of that kind of depends on the size of the company, how mature, let's say, the marketing and sales process and team is. The some of the things and tools that I utilized working for larger companies targeting enterprise organizations versus some of the tools that I used or even had budget for at some of the smaller companies I work for were very, very different. And so yeah, so that can be kind of a tough question to give like a blanket statement for, but I'll say that thinking back to like some of the time I spent at smaller companies.
Yeah.
I loved HubSpot. HubSpot was just an awesome tool for a small team that was really looking to kind of build some foundational pieces and really set themselves up for years of success ahead. HubSpot was, it was kind of my first order of business last year when I started at a small healthcare tech company. Was doing a rip and replace of their marketing automation platform. I had never done a project like that before, but I just knew how important it was to have a tool that really centralized a lot of what I was looking to do, and also simplified. I didn't have to go out and find like a reverse IP lookup function to de-anonymize visitors on my site. I didn't have to go find a social tool that could help me post and schedule posts regularly. Obviously, email was built into it as well. Their chat function was extremely strong as well. And so like a tool like that was perfect for our small team and some of the things that we were looking to do. Now, that team is going to continue to grow and evolve their marketing approaches. And so in a couple of years, they might need to start going outside and looking for additional tools to plug into HubSpot. Or if they did decide to replace the automation platform, it would just be a different conversation and different tools that they might need. And then, conversely, like at the larger companies, obviously the tools become much more complex. So the company I'm at now, LeadSpace, which is a CDP, I brought that on to a company I worked for, Iron Mountain, a couple of years ago, because we had a lot of challenges with things like lead to account matching. We had data quality issues. And we had wanted an intent data source that we could plug right into our automation platforms. And so LeadSpace was someone that was able to offer all that. And so I really pushed hard. We made it happen. It was a great tool for the company. And hey, it landed me a job a couple of years later too. But a CDP is not a tool that I think is going to make sense for a lot of smaller companies who are really looking to grow. The amount of tech and investment that you need to make in marketing tools when you're trying to go from like $0 to like $1 million to $5 million are a lot different than the companies who are looking at like sourcing just marketing revenue worth $40 million and over, right? So a CDP was a tool that at a large company made a ton of sense, where we had all these unified data sets and we wanted to pull them together and do some kind of predictive modeling. But that's not going to be appropriate for a small startup. And there's other ways that you can get to parts of that data, with other vendors out there that might be more appropriate for your size and where you're at in your marketing venture. So probably not a very direct answer to your question, but yeah, I guess it's a roundabout way of saying it. It depends. It depends on a lot of things.
Yeah, yeah. So the perfect thing which I found out was it is very different when the size of the company is different. Because suppose you are the place that you are in, you were a customer of that company at one point
Yes.
for another company, and now you are selling that to other people. So that is the number one thing which I think most of the people sometimes forget or don't know, that when is the time to use Mailchimp for mailing, or when is the time to use Calvary or some other tools, ConvertKit or those kind of things, and when is the time to scale up and have their own mailing system, or maybe have another thing. So some a few things which can be done on Excel sheets, the feature is there in HubSpot, but that can be done on Excel sheet also. You can
Yeah.
do it on free basis also as a team, but when team grows you have to get on a big tools and use those things. So I think you perfectly articulated that well, not in the perfect way as you are saying, but I think it was perfect for people to understand in that way.
Okay. Okay.
So while there are tools, there are technology, but how good is analytics, and so what is the value of analytics in demand generation, as you faintly touched upon that part, that back in 2008 when you started your journey, people were not so much knowledgeable or maybe sure about how to create funnels or what is the cost of acquisition and those kind of things at that time. And if you had those things you would be able to do targeting much better. So how are things currently, and what do you think is very important in demand generation when it comes to analytics?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've always been a bit of a data junkie, and a scoreboard watcher. I've spent a lot of time, especially at larger companies where I had a lot of data. I spent a lot of time analyzing data, and I've done everything from just kind of looking at reverse waterfall math that can be done on an Excel spreadsheet to I was able to take advantage of a Six Sigma program that my former employer was able to put me through, and I kind of used a marketing audit to go through, the Six Sigma DMAIC methodology. And so, some of the analytics that we were looking at while I was at that large company with a huge team were very different than, just a couple years later when I joined a team of under 100 people. And so, again, that does kind of depend on how mature your marketing team is. But for some of the smaller, kind of more, let's say, startup sized companies, I think that you almost need to think about like leading and lagging indicators for each of your channels and initiatives, and they can be really different, from channel to channel, from program to program. But I mean, a lot of the tools that, whether it be a marketing automation platform or Salesforce or just even things like the Microsoft Office suite, you can get a lot done without over analyzing data. There is definitely a such thing as analysis paralysis, where you're just spending too much time with the data and not trusting your gut instincts whatsoever, and that can be really problematic too. So like, when I was at Iron Mountain, and actually when I was going through that Six Sigma program, we were running all kinds of quant analysis on all the different programs we were running. One of which was our email nurture program, and we had these really knowledgeable people that helped to build them with frameworks that were like best practices. And when I ran this analysis, it basically, the output was that our nurture programs did not have an impact on whether or not the people within them became a customer. And I looked at that and thought, like, boy, I must have run this test wrong. This doesn't make any sense. Everybody knows email nurture is a mainstay within a marketing strategy. It's extremely important. How could it not have an impact on whether or not someone was a customer? And only, a couple of years later, when I was totally removed from that situation, did I realize that, like, it had nothing to do with how good our email nurture programs were, or how well they were built, or even the tests that we're running or anything like that. It was a matter of us really just being too overly focused on what we wanted the outcome of a nurture program to be, versus what the real intention should be of a nurture program, which is to provide legitimate education for the buyer, and not so much of trying to drive their lead score up, so that we could get them through a funnel quicker. Because the reality is, an email nurture program is built on a framework with the expectation that everything is going to be timed or based on engagements. But the reality is, people don't really buy in that linear fashion. And so to spend too much time analyzing or looking at all of the data within, an email marketing program for a smaller company, it doesn't make a ton of sense. For a larger company where you have thousands of people coming through your programs and funnels, and you've got a really sophisticated sales program, then yeah, you can justify having, people with dedicated roles focused on that stuff. But yeah, when I look back at that study I did in retrospect, I had to remove myself from the situation to realize that, oh, wait a second, the problem wasn't necessarily with who we were targeting in our email nurture programs or the programs themselves. It was the intent of the programs. And so they just, that was I think, like almost like a crack in the foundation. And so not until I kind of stepped away did I realize that, oh, the data was 100% accurate, and we just, we're thinking about nurture in the wrong ways. And so fast forward a couple of years, I spent a year at this health tech startup last year. We didn't build a single email nurture program. We used different ways to nurture our audience, which was using all ungated content, pushing it all out there to the things like LinkedIn, where we knew our audience was. We had a regular webinar series, like 3 to 6 webinars a month. And so there was plenty of ways for people to engage with us without us kind of forcing an email down their throat because, we felt that it was an appropriate time to send to them. So yeah, I say all that because there's a lot that you can do with analytics, but it all kind of depends on how mature your marketing team and program is. And so, right now I'm on a team of 2. I don't expect that we're going to be spending a ton of time early on here building an email nurture program. At some point, we might for certain buyers, but if and when we do that, the intentions are going to be really specific, and I might not have lead scoring, woven into our email nurture program, or I might, utilize some other approaches like advertising, digital advertising, in place of email nurture programs. And I might not have any links in the emails. It just might be, with the specific, focus in mind to just give value to that person and ask for nothing in return. And that's the right way to really nurture someone, is just share information, try to help them, so that when they do have time to, or when it is time to make a decision, or when that problem occurs, they're going to remember my brand, and it's not so much of trying to drive their lead score up and get them to sales quicker.
Great. Uh, I think it's a awesome way of looking at things, because a lot of people who understand analytics go deep down into each and everything. Because somewhere we were explaining things to a student when I was taking a class, and somebody asked, what are the parameters that one should look at, or what are the KPIs for Facebook? So at that time, I don't know why, but promptly I said there are 270 parameters on Facebook. Every week you can get something in green. So don't just focus on seeing numbers all the time, because sometimes I think, as you rightly said, we overdo a lot of times when we see numbers. Somebody who likes number, and then there is an audience who just doesn't like numbers, and there are marketers who are doing their thing just on their gut feeling, or by seeing a very minimal thing which is there. Uh, as we are coming to the end of the podcast story, thanks a lot once again for doing the whole show with us. And I think people will gain a lot of insights of why demand generation is necessary. And number one thing, what is demand generation in the first place? Because most of the people, like you said, think demand generation equal to lead generation, which is not the case in the first place. Uh, as we come in the end, I usually ask 2 questions to people. One is, what keeps you going in a way in this industry where everything changes in 6 months, 12 months down the road? Something which was working in 2008 is obsolete now and will not work at all. So somebody who is trying to build email list in 2016, the way or the approach was very different than somebody who's building it now. So Dropbox got into the referral model of marketing, and then they got a lot of new people on board. Uber had a different model, Groupon had a different model, Facebook tried to gain audience in a different way, but it keeps on changing. So how do you keep yourself motivated in a line where things change so much?
Yeah, I think ultimately that's probably what drove me into marketing is that I knew it was just constantly evolving and you had to be creative and innovative. And so I'm a naturally curious person. I don't think that I'll ever be an expert in whatever type of marketing that I'm going to be doing. And I think that that's an important mindset to have is to just want to constantly be learning and constantly be curious. And then the other part of it to me is kind of more of an internal mindset, and it's basically, when I feel like all of the other marketers that I know or that I'm seeing on LinkedIn or in different communities, when they're all doing the same approach that I'm doing, I know that I'm probably falling behind and I'm not innovating
Yeah.
enough. Whereas if I'm doing something and people are really questioning, like, I don't know if that sounds right, or that's a lot different than the way I'm doing it, that's how I kind of keep myself in check of like, okay, if I'm being different and I'm being innovative, then just you'll get a feel for those kind of things just in talking and engaging with other marketers. And the moment that everyone's kind of on the same page, or I'm on the same page as everyone else, that's when I feel like I'm probably falling behind. So that does kind of keeps a fire lit under me, and it does make me constantly think about evolving and thinking of new ways and strategies to really build marketing programs.
Great. Other question is, what are your sources of learning? So how do you? So we know the industry is evolving. We know how things are there. You have a group of fellow marketers who are also doing a lot of things. So how do you learn these things, or what is your source of learning?
Um, so I love podcasts. That's my probably my way to really ingest a lot of information about a specific topic. My two favorite podcasts, marketing podcasts, I should say. So Dave Gerhardt and the DGMG group. I'm a big
Yeah,
fan of what he's doing over there. I'm a subscriber there. I would recommend that to any marketer looking to improve any facet of the
marketing.
marketing that they or their company are doing. He just touches on a lot of topics, and yeah, and I just think he's a great mind in marketing. And Chris Walker and the State of Demand Gen podcast that he and the
Yes.
Refine Labs team. He's my other one, and obviously that's very focused on demand gen, and I think he is just a very disruptive but logical and rational mind in marketing and in demand generation right now. I definitely credit him for some of the approaches that I've taken over the last couple of years and am currently using at my company. Yeah, I think the type of topics that he's hitting on, the ways that he's really shaking up a lot of the ways people are thinking about marketing and demand generation, is exactly what this marketing community needed. And so, yeah, I would say those are my favorite two podcasts and my favorite two sources of information in everything marketing.
Great. I think I will have to listen the second part of demand generation podcast, which you talked about. The first one I listened to. So thanks a lot, Tori, for doing this with us. It was a great time. I personally had a lot of learnings from this. Hopefully, hopeful audience will also be equally eager to listen to you and learn from it. Thanks a lot for doing this.
My
Thank you.
Thank you very much.